The message arrived like a silent scream across the vast emptiness of space. It wasn't for everyone, only for Earth. It came through secure channels, bypassing normal communications, landing directly in the fortified command centers buried deep beneath mountains and oceans. The words were simple, carrying a weight of desperation that chilled the blood. Help us. They are destroying everything. We cannot fight them alone. Send your warriors. Please. Attached were images and data streams. Cities burning not under alien suns, but suns humanity knew from star charts. Forests turned to ash, oceans boiling under relentless bombardment. Fleets of warships, bearing a symbol long thought forgotten, a clenched fist gripping a shattered star, cut through the defenses of distant allies, and the faces, terrified faces of beings pleading for rescue before the screens went dark. They were humans, not aliens. Humans who had left Earth centuries ago, seeking a different path, building their own harsh empire among the stars. Now, this outsider empire had turned its guns on the rest of the galaxy, hungry for conquest. The civilizations sending the plea were falling fast. They believed Earth, the cradle of humanity, held the answer. They believed Earth would send its finest soldiers, its greatest heroes, to save them. In a room carved from ice and reinforced steel deep within the Arctic, two people watched the final plea play out on a large screen.
All day.
The air hummed with the low thrum of powerful generators and the sterile scent of filtered oxygen. General Nora Hayes stood rigid, her gaze fixed on the flickering images of destruction. Her face, etched with lines of command and worry, showed no surprise, only grim resolve. Beside her, Dr. Leo Grant adjusted his glasses, his eyes wide, not with fear, but with a kind of intense, almost feverish focus. His white lab coat seemed stark against the dark metal walls. "The Alliance is collapsing," Leonora stated, her voice low and steady. "They think we have armies waiting." Leo turned from the screen, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "We don't have armies, Nora. Not like they imagine. Not enough to stop that." He gestured towards the image of an outsider dreadnought vaporizing a space station. "And we can't risk what soldiers we have. Earth must be defended first." Nora didn't flinch, agreed. "But we do have an answer. We have Project Apex." A heavy silence followed her words. Leo took a deep breath.
I don't want one.
"Are we really doing this? Unleashing ... them?" "They asked for Earth's strength," Nora replied, her voice gaining a hard edge. "They asked for saviors. They didn't specify what kind of savior. We send what Earth has uniquely forged. We send its primal might. We send the past." She turned decisively from the screen. "Activate the cryobays. Prepare the Vanguard for immediate departure. Authorization, Hazal Festivan." Leo nodded, a spark of his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding the enormity of the decision. He tapped commands into a console. Deep within the mountain facility, klaxons sounded, not blaring alarms, but deep. Resonant pulses that vibrated through the floor. Massive reinforced doors, frosted with centuries-old ice, began to slide open with a grinding groan that echoed in the cavernous space beyond the command room. Following Nora, Leo descended into the heart of the facility. The air grew colder still. They passed banks of monitors displaying complex biological readouts and energy signatures. Technicians in heavy parkas moved with practiced efficiency, their breath misting in the frigid air. One young tech Ben looked up as they passed, his face pale. He'd only seen the subjects in simulation. Now he felt the deep thrumming in his bones intensify. They entered a vast chamber, easily the size of a stadium. Rows upon rows of towering cryopods lined the walls, glowing with a soft blue light. Thick cables snaked across the floor, pulsing with energy. Condensation dripped from the ceiling far above. Nora stopped before the first row of central pods. These were larger, more heavily reinforced. Leo approached a master control panel, his fingers hovering over the activation sequence. Bringing them up slowly, he murmured, more to himself than anyone, "Controlled revival cycle." Steam hissed violently as seals broke on the nearest pods. The thick, transparent covers began to retract. A deep, guttural sound, like stone grinding on stone, resonated from within the first pod. It wasn't a mechanical sound. It was organic, alive. Ben flinched. taking an involuntary step back. Nora stood firm, her hands clasped behind her back, watching intently. From the swirling mist of coolant, a shape began to emerge. Enormous. Dark fur, matted but thick, covered a muscular frame that dwarfed any living land predator Ben had ever seen. As the head lifted, two eyes, glowing with a fierce, unnatural yellow light beneath heavy brows, scanned the chamber. Its muzzle wrinkled, revealing long, curved fangs that gleamed like polished obsidian. But these weren't just teeth. Tiny arcs of blue-white energy plasma crackled faintly along their razor edges. A low growl rumbled in its chest, vibrating the metal platform beneath its massive paws. It was a wolf, but built like a tank. A creature ripped from ancient nightmares. A direwolf. Genetically resurrected, cybernetically enhanced. Another pod hissed open. This time the shape was sleeker, lower to the ground. It uncoiled with startling speed, landing silently on padded feet despite its size. Striped fur, shifting subtly in color even under the artificial lights. Adaptive camouflage. Covered powerful shoulders. Its most striking feature were the two long, curved saber teeth protruding from its upper jaw, shimmering with the same energy as the direwolf's fangs. Its intelligent eyes, sharp and calculating, locked onto Nora and Leo. A saber-tooth, impossibly alive, impossibly lethal. Further down the row, a third pod opened with a louder blast of steam. What emerged wasn't a mammal. It stood tall on powerful legs, ending in vicious talons that scraped grooves in the reinforced deck. Its body was covered not in fur, but in overlapping plates that looked like dark polished stone. Nanocarbide armor. Its head was like that of a monstrous bird, topped with a crest of hardened scales, ending in a heavy, hooked beak capable of crushing steel. It stretched its neck, letting out a piercing shriek that echoed painfully in the chamber. A terror bird, armored and terrifying. Ben stared, his mouth dry. These weren't soldiers. They weren't machines. They were ... monsters. Ancient, powerful, terrifying beasts. And they were awake. Nora Hayes stepped forward, her voice cutting through the primal sounds filling the chamber. "Gentlemen," she said, addressing the beasts as if they were soldiers on parade, "the galaxy has called for saviors. Earth has sent its answer. It has sent you." She turned to Leo, her expression unreadable. "Prepare them for transport. The Vanguard launches in 12 hours. We send the past to save the future." The deep growls and sharp clicks echoing from the awakening bay sent shivers through the young technician. Ben. He clutched his datapad tightly, his knuckles white. Dr. Leo Grant, noticing the fear, placed a steadying hand on the young man's shoulder. "Deep breaths, Ben," he said, his voice calm but firm. "They sense panic. Confidence is key. They're tools, highly dangerous tools, but tools nonetheless." General Nora Hayes didn't waste time on reassurance. Her sharp eyes scanned the vast chamber as more cryopods hissed open. Mist swirled, revealing other monstrous shapes stirring within, the armored bulk of what looked like a giant bear. The sleek, deadly form of a predator resembling an oversized jaguar with claws like vibra knives. "Status report, Grant," she commanded, her gaze never leaving the emerging beasts. "Revival protocols are nominal across all primary subjects," Leo replied, checking the main console. "Vital signs are strong, cybernetics online, aggression levels elevated, but within expected parameters post-thaw." He pointed to a screen showing the terror bird, now fully alert, its armored head swiveling, its powerful beak snapping at the air near its pod. "Subject Stormbreaker is particularly restless." "Understood," Nora said. "Begin transfer sequence to the Vanguard. Sedation Protocol Alpha, minimal dose. We need them alert, not sluggish, for transit." Ben flinched as the heavy clang of reinforced gates echoed. Massive internal doors slid open, revealing a wide passageway leading deeper into the mountain base. Automated loader arms, thick chains clanking, descended from the ceiling towards the occupied cryopods. The beasts reacted instantly. The direwolf, the first one awakened, let out a thunderous snarl. Lunging against the invisible energy barrier still containing it within its pod platform, plasma crackled along its fangs, leaving scorch marks on the air. The saber-tooth crouched low, its camouflaged fur rippling, making it hard to focus on a low, menacing rumble vibrating in its throat. Stormbreaker shrieked, a sound that pierced the ears and rattled tools on nearby benches. Engaging sedation mist, Leo announced, his finger hovering over a control. A fine, almost invisible spray hissed from nozzles around each platform. The beasts shook their massive heads, blinking rapidly. The direwolf's growl deepened into a confused whine. The saber-tooth's crouch became less aggressive, more wary. Stormbreaker ruffled its armored feathers but stopped shrieking, levels holding, proceeding with transfer. The loader arms attached magnetic clamps to the pods. With heavy groans of machinery, the pods, beasts and all, were lifted and slowly maneuvered onto massive anti-gravity sleds. Technicians guided the sleds with handheld consoles, keeping a wide, nervous berth. Ben helped guide one sled, carrying a pod with a creature that looked like a scaled, six-legged wolf. He jumped when a massive paw slammed against the pod's transparent cover directly in front of him, claws screeching on the reinforced material. "Steady, Ben," a new voice said. A woman in a practical gray jumpsuit, her dark hair pulled back tightly, walked beside him. Her name was Lena Cruz, and her eyes weren't on Ben, but locked onto the huge direwolf being loaded onto the lead sled. There was no fear in her gaze, only intense focus. She carried a device resembling a complex headset. They feel the movement. It unsettles them. "Handler Cruz," Leo greeted her as they reached the entrance to the launch bay. "Are you prepared?" "As I'll ever be," Dr. Lena replied, her voice calm. "The neural links are calibrated." "Fenrir," she nodded towards the direwolf, "and I have been practicing in simulation for months." "Real thing? ... Well, it's different." The launch bay was even larger than the cryo chamber, dominated by the sleek, imposing shape of the UEF Vanguard. The starship gleamed under powerful arc lights. Near its rear cargo ramp, reinforced containment cages, large enough to hold small buildings, were being secured. "Welcome to the party, Cruz," a voice called down. A man leaned over a railing high up on the Vanguard's flank near the bridge. He wore a flight suit, his expression a mix of awe and apprehension. "Pilot Kyle Dunn. Heard we're giving some prehistoric nightmares a lift. Try to keep them from chewing the wiring." "Yeah."
Amazing. Focus on flying straight. Done.
Lena called back, a slight smile touching her lips despite the tension. "I'll handle the passengers." The transfer was slow, tense work. Getting the massive sleds up the Vanguard's ramp required precision. The sedation mist kept the beasts mostly subdued, but their watchful eyes followed every movement. The air crackled with their barely contained energy. Finally, the last pod, Stormbreaker S, was maneuvered into its designated cage deep within the ship's hold. Heavy doors slid shut with final clangs, multiple locking systems engaging with loud hisses and heavy thunks. Leo checked his pad. All subjects secured, vital signs stable. Sedation wearing off as planned. He looked at Lena. "It's your show now, Handler." Initial bonding protocol. Lena took a deep breath. She approached Fenrir's cage. The direwolf stood at the front, its massive head lowered, those glowing yellow eyes fixed on her. The low growl had returned, a constant rumble. Lena ignored the technicians hastily retreating from the hold area. She raised the Neuralink headset, but didn't put it on yet. Instead, she moved slowly to a control panel near the cage and pressed a button. A small slot opened in the cage door. "Easy, big guy," she murmured, her voice low and steady. She reached into a pouch at her belt and pulled out a large piece of raw red meat. Carefully, she slid it through the slot onto the floor just inside the cage. Fenrir sniffed the air, the growl faltering. It took a step forward, then another, never taking its eyes off Lena. It lowered its head, sniffed the meat, and then, with surprising delicacy for such a huge beast, picked it up. It didn't eat immediately, just held it, watching her. Slowly, deliberately, Lena raised her empty hand, palm open, towards the energy barrier separating them. Fenrir tilted its head, curious. The intense yellow glow in its eyes seemed to soften fractionally, made a soft, chuffing sound. "Okay," Lena whispered. "Okay, Fenrir, we're going to talk properly soon." She carefully picked up the Neuralink device. From the observation gallery above the hold, Nora Hayes watched. She saw the huge beast, the piece of meat held gently in its jaws, and the small, determined woman standing before it. "Tools, Grant?" she asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ship's engines powering up. Leo adjusted his glasses. "Perhaps I oversimplified, General. Tools don't look at you like that. Tools don't show... curiosity." He paused. "The link will tell us more, if crews can establish it." Nora nodded, her gaze fixed on the scene below. The Crix and Solari begged for saviors from Earth. They expected soldiers, heroes in armor, instead. She gestured towards the cages holding the stirring saber-tooth, the armored terror bird rattling its cage bars with its beak, the dire wolf watching Lena. "We send them this... our past, our primal fury, our beasts." She turned away as Lena carefully placed the Neuralink device on her own head, its lights blinking to life. "Let's hope it's enough." "Prepare the Vanguard for immediate departure. Pilot done. Set course for the Crixus system. The galaxy is waiting for its saviors." The deep thrum of the UEF Vanguard's engines changed pitch. It became a powerful vibration felt through the deck plates, a sound that seemed to sink into your bones. Pilot Kyle Dunn's voice crackled over the ship-wide speakers. "All hands secure for hyperspace jump. Initiating in T-minus 60 seconds. Repeat, secure for jump." In the cavernous hold, the beasts reacted instantly. The low growls and restless shuffling stopped. Eerie silence fell. Fenrir, the huge direwolf, lifted his massive head, ears swiveling forward. His glowing yellow eyes narrowed, scanning the metal ceiling, as if he could see through it to the stars beyond. The saber-tooth, usually a shifting blur of camouflage, froze in place, muscles coiled tight. Even the usually noisy terrorbird Stormbreaker went still, its armored head tilted, listening. Lena Cruz stood near Fenrir's cage, the Neuralink headset resting on her own brow, its tiny indicator lights blinking softly. She felt the tension in the air thicken, a pressure building even before the jump. She looked at Fenrir, meeting his intense gaze. "Easy," she murmured, more to herself than to the beast. "Just to jump, like The Sims." But the simulations hadn't conveyed this raw physical anticipation. Above, in the command deck, General Nora Hayes watched the main view screen. Stars streaked past at impossible speeds, blurring into lines of light as the Vanguard accelerated to jump velocity. Beside her, Dr. Leo Grant monitored biological feeds from the hold on a smaller screen. "Remarkable," he whispered. Their heart rates spiked with the engine shift, but now they're dropping. Almost calm. "They sense it. Or remember it," Hayes replied grimly. Project Apex wasn't just about resurrection, it was about adaptation. Space was always part of their intended environment. 50-9. 50-8. Dunn's calm countdown continued. Lena closed her eyes, focusing on the Neuralink device. It wasn't fully active yet, just passively receiving. She concentrated on Fenrir. She pictured his massive form, the feel of his thick fur under her hand. Though she'd never actually touched him, the low rumble of his presence. She pushed feelings of calm, of steadiness, towards that connection. Strange sensation washed over her, not her own thoughts, but a wave of raw awareness. She felt the vibration of the deck not just in her feet, but deep in her chest. She felt the immense power of the ship straining forward, and beneath it all, a low thrum of ... curiosity. Alertness, it was hard to define, primal and wordless. It was Fenrir. 30... 20-9... ... The pressure intensified. Lena gasped as the feeling through the link sharpened. Fenrir wasn't afraid. He was waiting. Like a predator tensed before the pounce, but the pounce was into the unknown. She felt his focus, a laser-like intensity directed at the vibration, at the changing energy in the air. She also felt a flicker of something else, a deep, instinctive understanding of vast distances and the unnatural act of crossing them instantly. It was unsettling, profound. 10.9. Leo watched the biofeed spike again, then stabilize. They're holding. Better than the sim subjects ever did. 5.4.3. 2.1. Jump. The world outside the view screen didn't tear or rip. It simply ... changed. One moment, streaking stars. The next, an impossible tunnel of swirling, chaotic light. Hyperspace. Inside the ship, the vibration smoothed into a deep, resonant hum. The pressure vanished, replaced by a strange sense of weightless speed. In the hold, the beasts moved. Fenrir let out a low, resonant huff of air, shaking his great head as if clearing water from his ears. The saber-tooth stretched, its camouflage rippling as muscles uncoiled. Stormbreaker gave a short, sharp cry, more announcement than alarm, and began preening a wing joint with its massive beak. Lena opened her eyes. The raw sensations from the link faded slightly, settling into a background hum of awareness. She could still feel Fenrir's presence, a warm, powerful ember at the edge of her mind. He was looking at her again, not with suspicion this time, but with a kind of ... recognition. She took a tentative step closer to the cage barrier. "Jump successful," Dunn announced, relief clear in his voice. "Course locked for Crix's system. Its estimated arrival in 27 hours. Haze turned from the mesmerizing swirl of hyperspace on the main screen. "Status of our cargo, Doctor?" Leo scanned his data. "All vital signs nominal post-jump? Minimal stress indicators? Handler cruise?" He tapped a feed showing Lena's neural activity. Preliminary passive link established with subject Fenrir. Strong signal, stable. Haze nodded, a flicker of satisfaction in her eyes. "Good cruise. Report to the command deck." Lena took one last look at Fenrir. He tilted his head, watching her go. She touched the Neuralink device. "Later, big guy," she whispered, then turned and headed for the lift. Upstairs, the command deck was a hub of quiet activity. Dunn monitored navigation. Technicians checked systems. Haze and Grant stood near the main screen, now showing complex navigation charts superimposed over the hyperspace tunnel. Lena approached, snapping a quick salute. Handler Cruz reporting. General Haze acknowledged her. "Dr. Grant says you've made contact. Explain." Lena hesitated, searching for the right words. "It's hard to describe, ma'am." Through the link, passively. "I felt the jump, but I felt him feeling it. He wasn't scared. He was ... aware. Alert, like he understood something big was happening and he was ready for it." She paused. "There's intelligence there, General. It's more than we programmed. More than just instincts." Grant looked intrigued. "The cybernetics enhance neural processing, but the base intelligence is the resurrected Predator's own. Perhaps we underestimated their capacity for adaptation beyond the physical." Haze considered this, her gaze fixed on the swirling light. "Intelligence is useful. Control is essential. Can you guide him? Direct him?" Lena met the General's sharp eyes. "I think so, ma'am. The connection feels ... solid, like tuning into a strong signal. Sending clear intentions, simple commands. I believe he'll understand. The trust is starting." "Starting isn't enough, Cruz," Haze stated flatly. "We arrive at Crixus in less than a day. The outsiders are glassing the planet as we speak. Civilians are dying. Our saviors need to be ready to fight the moment those bay doors open." She pointed a finger at Lena. "Use these hours. Deepen that link. Practice. Fenrir is the alpha. The others will follow his lead. Make sure he understands his mission. Protect the weak. Destroy the invaders. The invaders," she emphasized, "are human. Like us, but not us. Make sure he knows the difference." The weight of the task settled on Lena's shoulders. It wasn't just about controlling a beast. It was about communicating complex ideas. Ally, enemy, protection, destruction, to a mind born in Earth's distant, savage past. She looked back towards the lift, towards the hold, towards Fenrir. "Understood, General. I'll make him ready." As Lena returned to the hold, the resonant hum of hyperspace travel filled the ship. The beasts were quieter now, resting or watching. Fenrir lay near the front of his cage, his huge head on his paws, but his glowing eyes tracked Lena's every move. The galaxy was rushing towards them. Earth's ancient nightmares were hurtling towards a war they didn't start, ready to become the saviors no one expected. Lena activated the neural link, its lights glowing steadily. She had 27 hours to teach a direwolf the meaning of mercy in the face of the enemy. The deep hum of the Vanguard's engines changed again, became sharper, louder, vibrating the deck plates under Lena Cruz's boots. Pilot Kyle Dunn's voice, tight with urgency, filled the ship. Exiting hyperspace in 5 minutes. Battle stations. All hands, brace for immediate combat conditions. The beasts in the hold reacted instantly. Fenrir surged to his feet, a low growl rumbling deep in his chest. His glowing yellow eyes fixed on the cargo bay doors. The saber-tooth, shadow stalker, melted into a rippling blur of camouflage near the bars of its cage. Only the faint gleam of its saber teeth visible. Stormbreaker, the terror bird, let out a piercing shriek and slammed its armored beak against the cage bars, making the metal ring. The other creatures, the armored bear Ursus, the sleek giant jaguar ghost, paced restlessly, sensing the shift. Lena tightened the Neuralink headset on her brow. The passive hum of Fenrir's awareness sharpened into a spike of intense alertness. She felt his focus like a physical force directed entirely at the sealed bay doors. He wasn't just sensing the change. He was anticipating it. She pushed a wave of calm towards him through the link. Steady. Wait. Above, on the command deck, the swirling tunnel of hyperspace vanished. Stars snapped back into sharp focus on the main view screen, but they weren't peaceful. The screen showed chaos. The planet Crixus filled half the view, a world of swirling greens and blues, marred by ugly black scars of burning forests and cities. Above it, ships fought, small, darting vessels. Defenders tried desperately to hold back a wave of larger, brutal-looking warships painted in harsh reds and blacks. These were Queen Diana's outsider fleet. Bright flashes lit up the dark. Explosions. Debris spun silently. Outsider dreadnoughts bombarding the southern continent. Dunn reported, his hands flying over the controls. Multiple fighters engaging our position. They've spotted us. The Vanguard shuddered. A muffled boom echoed through the hull. Red warning lights flashed on the bridge, shields holding. A technician yelled. Minor impact, starboard side. General Nora Hayes stood like a rock, her eyes scanning the devastation. Hail the Crix command frequency. Done. Tell them Earth's response has arrived. Dr. Leo Grant gripped a console, his face pale. They're being slaughtered down there. Small flickering image appeared in the corner of the main screen. It showed a being with large dark eyes set in a smooth, insect-like face. Its voice, translated by the ship's computer, was high-pitched and trembling with fear and exhaustion. UEF Vanguard, says Ambassador Veckel. Your arrival is a miracle. But we are overrun the outsider ground forces. They have broken through near the capital refuge. Thousands are trapped. Please, send your soldiers. Send them now. Hayes leaned towards the come. Ambassador Veckel. Reinforcements are deploying immediately. Stand by. She cut the connection and turned to Dunn. Get us low. Atmospheric insertion vector over the capital refuge zone. Bay doors ready on my mark. Her gaze flicked to a secondary screen showing the hold. Crews, prepare the package. Down below, Lena heard the general's voice. She took a deep breath, focusing entirely on the neural link. As Fenrir's intense awareness flooded her mind, she felt the vibration of the ship's engines, the distant thump of explosions, the sharp temps of fear in the air. She pushed a single clear image towards Fenrir, the view of the burning planet, the small, trapped figures she imagined below. Protect. Fenrir let out a short, sharp bark. He understood. The Vanguard plunged. The view on the command deck screens shifted violently. Stars replaced by streaking clouds, then the blurred greens and browns of the planet rushing up. The ship bucked and rattled as it hit the atmosphere. Outside, the sky was stained with smoke. Explosions bloomed on the ground below. Outsider tanks and walkers advancing on a vast makeshift camp huddled against towering moss-covered ruins. Bay doors opening, Dunn yelled, fighting the controls. Holding position as stable as I can get. With a grinding roar, the massive rear cargo bay doors of the Vanguard began to slide apart. Bright, smoky daylight flooded the hold. Wind roared in, whipping Lena's hair. The smell hit them, acrid smoke, burning things, and the metallic scent of fear. Ambassador Veckel's voice came through the come again, piped into the hold. We see your ship. Where are your warriors? Where are the soldiers? We need them on the ground. Lena ignored him. She looked at Fenrir. He stood poised at the very edge of his cage, muscles bunched, staring out at the war-torn landscape below. His growl was a continuous thunder now. The other beasts pressed against their cage bars, eyes fixed on the opening. Cruise. How Hayes' command crackled over the com. Lena slammed her hand on the master control panel. Multiple heavy clunks echoed as the cage doors unlocked and slid open. Go, Lena shouted, pouring the command through the neural link in with her voice. Protect. Hunt the attackers. Fenrir needed no further urging. With a deafening roar that shook the hold, the enormous direwolf launched himself out of the bay. He fell like a dark comet, plasma crackling along his fangs. Shadowstalker flowed out next, a streak of rippling camouflage vanishing almost instantly into the smoky air. Stormbreaker shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and plunged after them, wings tucked tight. Ursus and Ghost followed, roaring and snarling. Lena rushed to the open bay door, gripping a safety rail. She watched them fall. Fenrir hit the ground near an advancing outsider tank with an impact that kicked up a plume of dirt. He rolled and came up snarling, already lunging. Plasma fangs sheared through the tank's metal tread like paper. On the command deck, Ambassador Vekel's image reappeared on the main screen. His large eyes were wide with horror, not hope. He had seen what emerged from the ship. No? What? What are those? Those are not soldiers. Those are monsters. You sent monsters, but we asked for saviors. Commander Rachel Shaw, standing beside Hayes, leaned towards the cum. Her voice was cold, matter of fact. You asked for Earth's strength, Ambassador. You asked for its saviors. You didn't specify what form they would take. She gestured towards the screen, showing the direwolf ripping apart the tank, the terror bird scattering armored soldiers like leaves, Sabretooth appearing out of nowhere to shred a walker's leg. Earth sent what it had. Earth sent its beasts. Chaos swallowed the battlefield below the hovering vanguard. Smoke choked the air. The thunder of explosions and the sharp crack of energy weapons mixed with terrified screams. Outsider soldiers in dark red armor pushed forward, relentlessly towards the huddled mass of civilians pressed against the ancient mossy ruins. Tanks rumbled, their cannons seeking new targets. Then Fenrir landed. The impact shook the ground. Dirt fountained into the smoky air. For a split second, the fighting near the crashed direwolf paused. Outsider soldiers stared, confused, at the massive, dark-furred shape shaking itself off. Plasma crackled along its long fangs, casting an eerie blue light on its snarling muzzle and fierce yellow eyes. A nearby outsider tank commander recovered first. He barked an order. The tank's heavy turret swung towards Fenrir. Cannon glowed, charging. Fenrir didn't wait. He moved with shocking speed for his size, a blur of dark fur and crackling energy. He didn't attack the tank head-on. He lunged sideways, powerful legs driving him past the armored front. His massive jaws opened wide, plasma fangs glowing blindingly bright. He clamped down on the tank's rear tread. Metal screamed, sparks flew like fireworks. The hardened tread links didn't just break. They melted and sheared apart under the intense heat and force. The tank lurched violently, its damaged tread useless, grinding it to a halt. Soldiers nearby opened fire. Energy bolts sizzled against Fenrir's thick hide. He roared, shaking off the impacts like annoying insects, and turned his glowing gaze on the shooters. Above, Stormbreaker fell like an armored meteor. He didn't land softly, slammed directly onto the roof of another advancing tank. His powerful talons, tipped with reinforced claws, punched through the thinner top armor like it was paper. The tank shuddered. Inside, the crew panicked. Stormbreaker lowered his massive, crested head. His heavy, hooked beak hammered down once, twice, on the compromised plating. With a shriek of tearing metal, he ripped a hole open. Then he reached in. Lena Cruz, gripping the safety rail in the Vanguard's open bay, flinched. Through the neural link, she felt a brief, sharp burst of satisfaction. Then Stormbreaker lifted his head, something small and limp held in his beak. He tossed it aside with a flick. His shriek echoed across the battlefield, a sound of pure, terrifying dominance. Near the edge of the refugee camp, a squad of outsider soldiers was setting up a heavy energy cannon, aiming towards the civilians. They never saw Shadowstalker coming. The Sabretooth was a ripple in the air, a distortion of light and shadow. One moment, nothing. The next, He was among them. His camouflage flickered as he moved with impossible speed. Claws, like vapor knives, shimmering with energy, lashed out. Soldiers cried out, falling before they could even raise their weapons. The heavy cannon toppled over, silent. Ursus, the armored bear, lumbered into the path of an advancing line of outsider troop carriers. Energy bolts sparked harmlessly off his thick stone-like plates. He roared, a sound that vibrated the ground and charged. He hit the lead carrier head-on. The lighter vehicle crumpled like tinfoil under his massive weight and momentum. Shoved backwards into the carrier behind it, creating a tangled roadblock. Soldiers scrambled out, only to face the bear's sweeping claws and crushing jaws. Ghost, the giant jaguar, was a silent streak of death. He targeted the outsider infantry trying to flank the main beast attacks. He moved from shadow to shadow, appearing behind a soldier, dragging him down with a crunch of breaking armor, and vanishing again before his comrades could react. Panic began to spread through the outsider ranks. Inside the ruined city walls, Ambassador Veckel and his people huddled in terror. They had watched the monstrous beasts fall from the sky. They had seen the direwolf rip apart a tank. They had seen the terror bird tear open another. They saw soldiers slaughtered by an invisible predator and a bear smash vehicles like toys. Fear, colder than the void of space, gripped them. These were not saviors. These were nightmares made flesh. But then, something unexpected happened. A group of outsider soldiers, cut off from their main force by Ursus's roadblock, tried to push through a narrow alley leading directly towards a section of the wall where many civilians, including young ones, were hiding. They raised their weapons. Fenrir, tearing through another group of soldiers near a burning building, stopped. His head snapped around. Through the smoke, he saw the threat to the huddled figures. Lena felt it through the link. A surge of pure, protective fury. Not hunger, not just aggression. Protect. Fenrir howled. It wasn't the roar of a predator on the hunt. It was a deep, resonant call that cut through the battlefield noise. Stormbreaker, perched on the wrecked tank, shrieked in answer. Shadowstalker, finishing off a soldier, melted back into camouflage and streaked towards the alley. Ursus turned his massive bulk, abandoning the tangled carriers, and charged towards the new threat, bellowing. Ghosts appeared on a rooftop overlooking the alley, a silent, deadly sentinel. The outsider soldiers in the alley barely had time to register the monstrous shapes converging on them. Shadowstalker struck first, a whirlwind of claws from seemingly nowhere. Fenrir slammed into the rear of the group. Ursus blocked the alley mouth. The attack was brutal, efficient, and over in seconds, the soldiers never got a shot off towards the civilians. Inside the ruins, the terrified silence broke. A low murmur rose from the crowd. Ambassador Veckel stared, his large eyes wide, not with horror now, but with dawning, disbelieving awe. He watched the huge direwolf step over the fallen soldiers. It turned its massive head towards the wall, towards the civilians it had just shielded. Its glowing yellow eyes scanned the crowd, lingering for a moment on a small child clutching its parent. The low growl in its chest softened, just for an instant. Then it turned back to the wider battle, plasma fangs crackling once more. Veckel slowly raised a trembling limb, pointing. They protected us, he whispered, his voice thick with shock. The monsters protected the children. On the Vanguard's command deck, General Nora Hayes watched the tactical display. Red outsider icons were blinking out, overwhelmed by the sudden savage counterattack. Green zones, marking civilian safe areas, were stabilizing. A grim smile touched her lips. They understand the mission, Doctor. Leo Grant watched the feed from the ruins, showing the stunned civilians looking at the beast not just with fear, but with the first flicker of desperate hope. They understand more than that, General, he murmured. They understand why. Lena Cruz sagged slightly against the rail, sweat beading on her forehead. The Neuralink hummed, filled with Fenrir's fierce focus, the raw power of the other beasts, and the overwhelming sensory chaos of the battle. She felt exhausted, exhilarated, and deeply connected. She pushed a single clear thought back through the link towards Fenrir and the pack he commanded. Good, protect. The outsider attack broke. Soldiers who moments before had advanced with brutal confidence now scrambled backwards in panic. The beasts were everywhere, tearing through armor, scattering troops, smashing vehicles, the air filled with screams, the sharp smell of burnt metal, and the terrifying roars and shrieks of Earth's ancient predators. Fenrir stood over the wreckage of a troop carrier, his dark fur matted with grime, plasma still flickering faintly on his fangs. He watched the retreat. His huge chest heaved, but his glowing yellow eyes were alert, scanning. Through the neural link, Lena Cruz felt his focus shift. The immediate threat near the refugees was gone, but the enemy was fleeing, not defeated. They could regroup. They could attack again. A low growl rumbled in Fenrir's chest. It wasn't just sound, it was a signal. Nearby Shadowstalker, the Sabertooth, materialized from his camouflage near a burning building. He tilted his head, listening. High above, perched on a broken spire, Stormbreaker let out a short, sharp cry. Ursus stopped crushing an abandoned weapon mount and looked towards Fenrir. Ghost appeared silently on a nearby rooftop. Fenrir lowered his head, sniffing the ground. He caught the strong scent trail of the fleeing outsiders. He looked towards the east, where the ground rose into steep rocky canyons, a perfect place for the soldiers to hide, regroup, and launch ambushes. Another growl, deeper this time. He bounded forward, heading straight for the canyon entrance. Shadowstalker flowed after him, vanishing into the rippling heat haze. Stormbreaker took flight, his armored wings beating powerful strokes as he soared towards the high canyon walls. Ursus lumbered after Fenrir, and Ghost slipped down from the roof, a silent shadow moving between the ruins. Inside the vanguard, still hovering above the battlefield, Lena gripped the railing. Her knuckles were white. The Neuralink hummed intensely. She felt Fenrir's determination, the pack's coordination, the raw drive to pursue. She also felt the lingering echoes of the battle. The adrenaline. The metallic taste of fear from the soldiers. The satisfying crunch of armor giving way. It was overwhelming, primal. She pushed back a wave of unease, focusing on the mission. Protect. Stopping the enemy here meant protecting the refugees later. General Nora Hayes watched the tactical display on the bridge. Green icons representing the beasts moved rapidly towards the canyon system. Red icons. Fleeing outsider troops were disappearing into the maze of rocks. "They're pursuing," she stated, her voice flat. Dr. Leo Grant adjusted his glasses. Studying a secondary screen showing Fenrir's vital signs and the Neuralink data. "Instinctual pursuit behavior," he murmured. "But coordinated, directed. Fenrir's leading them to cut off the retreat." "Can Cruz control them in there?" Hayes asked, her eyes fixed on the canyon entrance. "It's tight. It's difficult for air support." "The link is stable," General Grant replied. "But the canyon environment, it's complex. And the beasts, their predatory drive is high." Lena didn't try to stop them. Through the link, she reinforced the core command. Protect. Stop the attackers. She trusted Fenrir to know how. The canyon was a place of deep shadows and towering rock walls. The fleeing outsider soldiers felt a sliver of hope as they ducked into its narrow passages. They could hide here, call for extraction, maybe set traps. The sounds of the main battle faded, replaced by the crunch of boots on gravel and harsh breathing. Then a shadow fell over them. Looking up, they saw Stormbreaker circling high above, a dark shape against the bright sky, blocking any easy escape route. Anik flared again. "Keep moving," yelled a soldier, gesturing deeper into a particularly narrow split in the rock. "Find cover." They rushed into the tight crevice, a dozen soldiers crammed into a space barely wide enough for two to walk abreast. Walls of rough stone rose high on either side. It felt safer, claustrophobic, but defensible. At the entrance to the crevice, Fenrir appeared. He was too large to enter. He stood blocking the light, his massive form filling the opening. His glowing eyes peered into the gloom where the soldiers huddled, frozen in fear. He snarled, a deep rumbling sound that echoed off the stone walls. Plasma sparked along his fangs, illuminating the terror on the soldiers' faces. One soldier, younger than the others, his face streaked with dirt and sweat beneath his helmet, stumbled forward. His energy rifle clattered to the ground. He raised his empty hands, trembling violently. "Please," he choked out, his voice cracking. "Don't. We surrender. We just followed orders. Please." The other soldiers stared, some in disbelief, some with dawning, desperate hope. The young soldier took another shaky step towards the monstrous direwolf filling the entrance. "Mercy, please, show mercy." Fenrir's head tilted slightly. The low snarl paused, his glowing eyes fixed on the pleading soldier. Through the neural link high above in the vanguard, Lena felt it. A flicker, hesitation, not confusion, but assessment. Fenrir sensed the dropped weapon, the open hands, the raw fear, without aggression. Lena held her breath, pouring every ounce of the concept innocent through the link. For a long, tense moment, Fenrir stood motionless, studying the young man. The canyon was silent, except for the soldier's ragged breathing and the distant cry of Stormbreaker overhead. The other beasts waited, unseen in the rocks nearby. Then, Fenrir's lips pulled back, revealing the full length of his plasma-crackling fangs. The snarl returned, deeper, more terrible than before. It wasn't hesitation anymore, it was judgment. He lunged, not at the pleading soldier, but past him deep into the crevice. His massive shoulder slammed into the rock wall. Stone cracked and splintered. His jaws snapped shut, not on flesh, but on the energy rifle another soldier was trying to raise. The weapon shattered. A soldier screamed, scrambling backwards, trapped. Shadowstalker flowed into the crevice like dark water, appearing behind the panicked men. Claws flashed. Ursus slammed his bulk against the crevice entrance from the other side, shaking the ground. Stormbreaker's shadow passed over the narrow opening again. The young soldier who had begged was knocked aside by the rush of his fleeing comrades. He hit the canyon wall hard, stunned. He watched, eyes wide with horror, as the monsters his people had laughed at as mere beasts tore through the trapped soldiers. There was no surrender accepted here, no mercy given. Only the swift, brutal efficiency of predators eliminating a threat. Lena gasped, leaning heavily on the railing. The sensations flooding through the link were intense. The crunch of bone, the tearing of armor, the final cries cut short, mixed with Fenrir's fierce satisfaction in the hunt. She felt sick, but also a grim understanding. Fenrir had paused. He had assessed. And he had decided the soldiers, even the one pleading, were still the attackers, yet still the threat to the innocents. The mission was clear: protect the innocent, destroy the attackers. On the bridge, Leo Grant watched the biosigns and the feed from Lena's link. He saw the brief hesitation, the assessment, and the brutal resolution. He understood the plea, Grant said quietly, his voice tight. He recognized it, and he chose the mission. General Hayes watched the tactical display. The red icons in the canyon blinked out, one by one. "They aren't trained soldiers following rules of war, Doctor," she stated, her voice cold. "They are weapons, primal, intelligent weapons. Yeah, they know their purpose. Protect the innocent. Everything else is the enemy." She turned away from the screen. "Recall them, Cruz. The sector is secure." Lena closed her eyes for a moment, pushing the command through the link. The images of the refuge of safety. "Return below." Fenrir lifted his head from the silence of the crevice, gave one last low growl into the gloom, then turned and padded out into the canyon light, the pack gathering around him, leaving only stillness behind. The silence in Queen Diana's command center was thick and cold. It pressed down on the officers gathered around the large holographic display. The image showed the Crixus system, specifically the ruined city near the moss-covered ruins. Red markers, representing her elite ground forces, were gone. Wiped out, the feed from a surviving drone showed the aftermath. Broken machines, scorched earth, and the dark shapes of the beasts moving among the wreckage like restless shadows. Queen Diana stood perfectly still before the display. She wore a sleek suit of crimson armor, polished to a high shine, reflecting the dim light. Her face, usually composed and regal, was pale. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the edge of the console. Her eyes, a cold blue, burned with a fury hotter than any starship engine. "Animals," she whispered, the words slicing through the silence. "Earth sends animals to fight my armies." Her voice rose, sharp and dangerous. "They send monsters from their past to shame me?" She slammed a fist down on the console. The hardened surface cracked under the impact. Officers flinched. My finest battalions, crushed, torn apart. By wolves. By birds. She spun around, her gaze sweeping over her cowed subordinates. "Does Earth think so little of me?" They fight me with beasts instead of soldiers? Her second in command, General Marcus Roy, stepped forward. He was a tall man, his face scarred, his expression always calculating. He looked older than Diana, his hair gray at the temples. He kept his voice low and steady. Your Majesty, the initial reports confirmed the creatures possess significant cybernetic enhancement. Plasma weaponry integrated into natural features. Adaptive camouflage, heavy armor plating. They are more than simple animals. They are beasts, Marcus. Diana snarled, whipping back to the screen. She jabbed a finger at the image of Fenrir, magnified as he padded near the refugee walls. Look at it. It's an overgrown dog with electric teeth. And it destroyed a tank battalion. Her voice trembled with rage and humiliation. They make a mockery of us. She paced, the crimson armor glinting. Earth hides behind these abominations. They lack the courage to face us themselves. They send their nightmares instead. She stopped, a cruel smile twisting her lips. Fine. If Earth wants to play with monsters, we will play, and we will win. She turned to Roy, her eyes gleaming. I want one of those creatures, Marcus, alive. Capture it. Roy raised an eyebrow. Capture, Your Majesty. They are exceptionally dangerous. Our forces are failing. Diana snapped. Failing against animals. I will not tolerate it. I want one brought to me, intact. I will dissect it myself. I will understand its weaknesses. I will learn how to turn Earth's weapons against them. Her smile widened, turning predatory. And then, I will skin it. Its pelt will make a fine rug for my throne. A reminder to Earth of the price of their insolence. Roy nodded slowly, absorbing the order. He understood the rage, the need to strike back symbolically. It will be difficult, Majesty. They operate with coordination, almost like a pack led by that large wolf creature. Difficult is not impossible, General, Diana hissed. Find a way, lure one, trap it. Use non-lethal force, EMP nets, sonic dampeners, heavy stunners. I don't care how you do it, but bring me one of Earth's monsters. I want to look into its eyes before I take it apart. She gestured dismissively at the screen, showing Stormbreaker perched on a broken spire. Start with that flying horror. It seems arrogant. Bring it down. Understood, Your Majesty, Roy said, his mind already working on the problem. He signaled to his tactical officers. Plans began to form on secondary screens. Terrain maps, resource allocation, schematics for capture equipment. Diana turned back to the main display, watching the beasts patrol the secured perimeter around the refugee ruins. Her earlier fury had cooled into a hard, icy resolve. Let Earth celebrate their little victory, she murmured, more to herself than anyone else. Let them think their savages have won the day. She traced the image of Fenrir with a sharp armored fingernail. Soon, beast, you will serve a new queen. Your hide will warm my feet. The command center remained silent, filled only by the low hum of machinery and the chilling certainty in their queen's voice. The war had just taken a darker, more personal turn. The UEF Vanguard rested on the outskirts of the ruined city, its engines humming softly. Inside the cargo hold, the beasts had returned. Fenrir lay near the center, his massive chest rising and falling steadily as he rested. Stormbreaker perched on a high beam, his armored feathers twitching occasionally. Shadowstalker was nearly invisible, his camouflage blending into the dim light. Ursus snored loudly in his corner, and Ghost sat watchful near the door. Lena Cruz stood just outside the hold, breathing deeply. The neural link still hummed in the back of her mind, a faint but constant presence. She could feel Fenrir's exhaustion, the dull ache of battle, but also his alertness. He wasn't just resting, he was waiting. General Nora Hayes entered the corridor, her sharp eyes scanning the hold before settling on Lena. Crew's status, Lena straightened. They're stable, General, recovering fast. Fenrir's link is strong. He's aware. Hayes nodded.
Good, because we have a problem. She handed Lena a data pad.
The screen displayed a broadcast Queen Diana's furious speech, her promise to hunt the beasts, her threats. Lena's stomach tightened. She wants them dead. Worse, Hayes said. She wants them captured. Alive, studied, broken. Lena looked back at Fenrir. His glowing yellow eyes were open now, watching her. He had heard. He understood. We can't let that happen, Lena said. Hayes' expression was grim. We won't. But Diana isn't stupid. She'll adapt. She set traps. She used the one thing we can't ignore, the refugees. Lena frowned. What do you mean? Hayes pulled up a new map on the datapad. Solari Prime. Another Alliance world. Outsider forces are moving in. Civilians are trapped. If we send the beasts there, it's exactly what Diana expects. She'll be ready. Lena clenched her jaw, but we have to go. Can't just leave them. Hayes' lips thinned. Exactly, which is why we need a new plan. One Diana won't see coming. On the bridge of the Iron Crown, General Marcus Roy studied the latest reports. His sharp mind worked methodically, analyzing every detail of the beast's attack patterns. He had seen the footage, the way the direwolf led the others, the way the terror bird targeted weak points, the way the saber-tooth struck from nowhere. They're not just animals, he muttered. They're tactical. Queen Diana stood nearby, her crimson armor gleaming in the dim light. Then we treat them like soldiers. We outmaneuver them. Roy nodded. Solari Prime is the key. Hey, the refugees there are vulnerable. The beasts will come, and when they do... He pulled up a schematic of an old industrial complex on the planet's surface. We turned the battlefield into a cage. Diana's smile was cold. Perfect. Let them think they're saving the weak. Let them charge right into our trap. Back on the Vanguard, Lena sat beside Fenrir's cage, the neural link humming between them. She closed her eyes, focusing. She didn't just send commands now. She shared thoughts, images. Solari Prime. Danger. Trap. Fenrir's growl was low. Thoughtful. He understood. Lena opened her eyes and looked at Hayes. He knows. They all do. They won't walk into this blindly. Hayes crossed her arms. Then what's the play? Lena took a deep breath. We give Diana exactly what she wants, but not how she expects it. The Vanguard dropped out of hyperspace near Solari Prime. The planet loomed below, its surface scarred by war. Smoke rose from burning cities. Pilot Kyle Dunn's voice crackled over the comms. Outsider fleet in orbit. They're waiting for us. Hayes stood firm. Good. Let them see us coming. In the hold, the beasts were ready. Fenrir stood at the front, his plasma fangs flickering to life. Stormbreaker stretched his wings, talons flexing. Shadowstalker vanished into rippling air. Ursus let out a deep, rumbling growl. Ghost's eyes gleamed in the dark. Lena tightened the neural link. Hey, this isn't just a fight, she whispered. It's a hunt. And this time, ... We set the trap. The bay doors opened. The beasts leaped into the smoke-filled sky. Diana wanted monsters? Earth would send her nightmares. The UEF Vanguard shuddered as it broke through Solari Prime's atmosphere. Smoke and fire streaked across the sky outside the open cargo bay doors. The beasts stood at the edge, their powerful muscles coiled, their eyes locked on the war-torn landscape below. Lena Cruz gripped the Neuralink headset, her fingers tight. The connection hummed with Fenrir's focus sharp, unwavering. She didn't need words to understand his thoughts. The battlefield called to him. The hunt was about to begin. General Nora Hayes' voice crackled over the ship's comms. Outsider forces have the main city surrounded. Civilians are trapped in the central district. They're expecting us to charge straight in. Lena exhaled slowly. Then we don't. Fenrir's ears twitched. He turned his massive head toward her, his glowing yellow eyes piercing. Lena met his gaze. We split up, draw them out, make them chase us. Fenrir rumbled deep in his chest agreement. The Vanguard banked sharply, veering away from the main city. Below, outsider troops scrambled, their sensors tracking the ship's sudden shift. Out. Fenrir landed first, hitting the ground with a thunderous impact. Dust billowed around him as he lunged forward, plasma fangs crackling. Stormbreaker swooped low, his armored wings slicing through the air as he targeted a communications tower. Shadowstalker melted into the ruins, his camouflage flickering as he moved unseen. Ursus and Ghost went west, toward the industrial sector where the real trap waited. The outsider soldiers reacted instantly, as orders were shouted. Troops moved in formation, their weapons raised. They had been told to expect a direct assault. This was chaos. On the bridge of the Iron Crown, Queen Diana watched the feeds from the battlefield. Her lips curled into a cold smile. They're scattering. Good. Let them run. General Marcus Roy studied the tactical display. The direwolf is heading toward the eastern ruins. The terror bird is disrupting our calms. The others, his eyes narrowed. The bear and the jaguar are moving toward the industrial zone. Diana's smile sharpened, and we spring the trap early. Send the mechanized units to intercept. I want that wolf alive. Roy hesitated, and the civilians. LaDonna waved a dismissive hand. Let them cower. The beasts are the priority now. Fenrir moved like a storm through the eastern ruins. His massive form tore through barricades, his plasma fangs slicing through metal and flesh alike. Soldiers fired at him, their energy bolts scorching his thick fur, but he didn't slow. He didn't stop. Lena felt every impact through the neural link, every surge of his muscles, every snarl that ripped from his throat. She pushed back one thought, over and over. Draw them in, keep them chasing. Stormbreaker shrieked overhead, his talons ripping through an outsider dropship. The vessel spiraled downward, exploding in a fireball that lit up the sky. Shadowstalker struck from the shadows, his claws flashing. The soldiers fell before they even saw him, and then the trap was set. Ursus and Ghost reached the industrial zone. The massive bear smashed through the outer gates, his armored hide deflecting gunfire. Ghost moved like liquid darkness, slipping past defenses unseen. Inside, the outsiders had prepared. Reinforced cages lined the walls. Electrified barriers hummed with power. This was where they had planned to capture the beasts. But the beasts weren't here to be caught. They were here to destroy. Ursus roared, charging straight for the main power grid. His claws tore through cables, sending sparks flying. Ghost leaped onto a control panel. His razor-sharp claws shredding circuits. Alarms blared. The lights flickered. And then silence. The traps were disabled. Fenrir felt the shift in the air. The soldiers chasing him hesitated, their comms crackling with panicked reports. Lena's voice cut through the neural link, clear and fierce. Now, Fenrir howled a deep, echoing cry that shook the ruins. Stormbreaker answered from above. Shadowstalker's snarl came from the shadows. Ursus bellowed in the distance. The hunt was over. Now came the slaughter. The outsider soldiers realized too late they had been lured away from the civilians. Their weapons were useless against the beast's speed, their tactics meaningless against the beast's fury. Fenrir tore through the last of them, his plasma fangs burning bright. On the Iron Crown, Diana's screen filled with static. The feeds from Solari Prime were gone. Roy's face was grim. We've lost contact with the ground forces. Diana's hands clenched into fists. Send reinforcements. Bomb the area. I'll kill them. Roy didn't move, Your Majesty. The beasts were never the real threat. Diana turned, her eyes blazing.
What?
Roy pointed to the screen. Look, the static cleared for a moment, just long enough to show the UEF Vanguard hovering over the city, its bay doors open, and the beasts, all of them, returning to it. The civilians were safe. The outsider forces were broken. And Earth's monsters had won. Lena sagged against the railing as Fenrir leaped back into the hold, his fur singed but his eyes bright with victory. The other beasts followed, their bodies humming with energy. Hayes' voice came over the comms. Mission accomplished. Get us out of here, done. The Vanguard's engines roared to life, lifting them away from the battlefield. Lena looked at Fenrir. He stared back, his massive chest rising and falling steadily. No words were needed. They had fought. They had protected. They had won. And somewhere in the stars, Queen Diana screamed in rage. The UEF Vanguard floated in the silent darkness between stars. The ship was quiet now, the engines humming softly. The beasts rested in the cargo hold, their bodies healing from the battle. Fenrir lay on his side, his massive ribs rising and falling slowly. Stormbreaker perched on a beam above, his sharp eyes watching. Shadowstalker was a faint ripple in the air, his camouflage never fully turning off. Ursa snored in the corner, and Ghost sat near the door, ever watchful. Lena Cruz sat against the wall, the Neuralink headset in her hands. She stared at it, her fingers tracing the smooth edges. The connection to Fenrir still hummed in the back of her mind, faint but steady. She could feel his exhaustion, his satisfaction, his readiness for the next fight. The door to the hold slid open. General Nora Hayes stepped inside, her boots clicking against the metal floor. She looked at the beasts, then at Lena. "You did good out there." Lena nodded. "They did most of it." Hayes smirked. "Don't sell yourself short. That link is the only reason they didn't tear apart half the city along with the outsiders." She crossed her arms. "But we've got a problem." Lena looked up. "Diana." Hayes' face darkened. "Diana isn't just angry, she's desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. Or they get reckless." She pulled out a datapad and handed it to Lena. "She's pulling forces from 3 sectors. Every ship, every soldier. She's coming for us." Lena scanned the data. Fleet movements, supply lines, all leading to one place. She's going to attack Earth. Hayes nodded. She knows she can't beat the beasts head on, so she's going for the heart. Our home. Lena's grip tightened on the datapad. We have to stop her. Hayes' eyes flicked to Fenrir. The direwolf's head was up now, his ears forward. He was listening. "We will, but we can't do it alone. The Vanguard isn't enough. The beasts aren't enough." Lena frowned. "Then what do we do?" Hayes took a deep breath. "We remind Diana why Earth was never meant to be messed with in the first place." Pilot Kyle Dunn's voice crackled over the ship's comms. "Jumping in 5. Hold on to something." The Vanguard shuddered as it tore through hyperspace. The swirling tunnel of light outside the viewports blurred into streaks. Inside the hold, the beasts shifted, their instincts sensing the unnatural movement. Fenrir let out a low growl, his claws flexing against the floor. Lena reached out through the neural link. "Easy, we're going home." Fenrir's growl faded. He understood. The ship dropped out of hyperspace with a jolt. Outside the viewports, a blue-green planet hung in the blackness Earth. But something was wrong. Dunn's voice was tense. "We've got company." Ships filled the space around Earth, not outsider vessels, human ones. Massive battleships, sleek destroyers, carriers bristling with fighters. The entire United Earth fleet mobilized and waiting. Hayes let out a slow breath. "Right on time." Lena stared. "You called them?" Hayes nodded. "Diana wants a war. Fine. But she doesn't get to decide how it's fought." She turned to the comm. "Done. Open a channel to the fleet." A moment later, a deep voice filled the ship. "General Hayes." "Took you long enough." Hayes smirked. "Had some errands to run. Admiral Cole, you ready?" The Admiral's voice was steel. "Earth doesn't bow to tyrants. Never has, never will." Hayes looked at Lena. "Tell the beast to get ready. This isn't just a battle anymore." The smile was sharp. "It's a hunt." Queen Diana stood on the bridge of the Iron Crown, her fists clenched. The sensor screens showed the gathered Earth fleet, the Vanguard at its center. General Marcus Roy stood beside her, his face grim. "They knew we were coming." Diana's lips curled. "Let them come. Them all come." She turned to the comm officer. "Open fire. Wipe them out." The Iron Crown's weapons flared to life. The battle for Earth had begun. On the Vanguard, Lena tightened the neural link. Fenrir rose to his feet, his plasma fangs igniting. Stormbreaker spread his wings. Shadowstalker vanished into the air. Ursus roared. Ghost bared his teeth. Lena looked at them, then at the screens showing the incoming enemy fleet. "Let's finish this." The beasts howled, their voices shaking the ship. Earth's monsters were going to war. The battle raged in the cold silence of space. Energy weapons flashed between the fleets, lighting up the darkness like deadly fireworks. The UEF Vanguard weaved through the chaos, its guns blazing. Inside the cargo hold, the beasts waited, their bodies tense, their instincts screaming for the fight. Lena Cruz stood near the bay doors, the neural link humming in her mind. She could feel Fenrir's impatience, Stormbreakers, sharp focus, Shadowstalkers, silent readiness. They were not meant to be caged, they were meant to hunt. General Nora Hayes' voice crackled over the comms. "We can't hold them off forever. The fleet's buying us time, but Diana's throwing everything at us." Lena clenched her fists. "Then we end this." Hayes paused. "There's only one way. We take the fight to her." Lena understood. The Iron Crown, Diana's flagship, is the heart of the Outsider Empire. Fenrir let out a low growl, his claws scraping the floor. He knew they all did. The Vanguard banked sharply, dodging a volley of enemy fire. Pilot Kyle Dunn's hands flew over the controls. We've got a window. 60 seconds to clear a path to the Iron Crown. Hayes' voice was steel. Do it! Lena turned to the beasts. This is it. We go for the Queen. Fenrir's eyes burned with understanding. Stormbreaker shrieked, his wings flaring. Shadowstalker's form flickered, his camouflage activating. Ursus stood to his full height, his armored hide gleaming. Ghost's tail twitched, his muscles coiled. The bay doors opened, the black void of space stretched before them, the massive shape of the Iron Crown looming in the distance. Lena took a deep breath. Go. The beasts leaped into the darkness. Queen Diana stood on the bridge of the Iron Crown, her face twisted in fury. Focus fire on the Vanguard. I want that ship destroyed. General Marcus Roy frowned at the sensors. Something's wrong. They're not running. There the alarms blared. The technician's voice was sharp with panic. Breach. Multiple breaches in the lower decks. Diana's blood ran cold. What? The answer came in the form of a thunderous roar echoing through the ship's corridors. Fenrir had landed. Lena felt every second through the neural link. The rush of the void. The impact as Fenrir tore through the Iron Crown's outer hull. The heat of battle as he surged through the halls, his plasma fangs cutting through metal and flesh alike. Stormbreaker soared through the ship's ventilation shafts, his talons shredding anything in his path. Shadowstalker moved like a ghost, striking from the darkness before vanishing again. Ursus smashed through bulkheads, unstoppable. Ghost hunted in the silence, his kills swift and precise. The Outsider soldiers fought back, but they were unprepared for this. They'd trained for ship-to-ship combat, for infantry battles, not for monsters loose in their halls. Lena's voice whispered through the link. Find her. Find Diana. Fenrir's snarl was answer enough. Diana backed away from the bridge's main screen, her breath coming fast. The feeds showed the beasts carving through her ship, getting closer with every second. Roy grabbed her arm. We need to evacuate. Now. She shook him off, her eyes wild. No, this is my ship. My empire. She whirled to the nearest console, slamming her fists down on the cum. All units, converge on the bridge. Kill those creatures. The ship shuddered. A distant explosion rocked the corridor outside. Then silence. The bridge doors exploded inward. Fenrir stood in the wreckage, his fur matted with grime, his fangs dripping with plasma. Behind him, the other beasts gathered, their eyes locked on Diana. She drew her energy pistol, her hand shaking. You think this is over? You think you've won? Fenrir took a step forward. His growl shook the room. Lena's voice, calm and certain, echoed through the neural link. Finish it? Fenrir lunged. Aboard the Vanguard, Lena gasped as the connection flared with Fenrir's fury, with the finality of the strike. Then silence. A's voice was quiet. It's done. The Iron Crown's weapons powered down. The Outsider fleet, leaderless, began to scatter. Earth had won. The beasts had won. And somewhere in the stars, the legend of Earth's monsters would live on. Silence filled the bridge of the UEF Vanguard. The last of the Outsider ships had fled, their formation broken, their queen dead. The battle was over. Earth was safe. Lena Cruz sat on the floor of the cargo hold, her back against Fenrir's massive side. The dire wolf lay beside her, his breathing slow and steady. Stormbreaker perched nearby, his sharp eyes watching. Shadowstalker had reappeared, his camouflage finally relaxed. Ursus and Ghost rested near the door, their bodies weary but unharmed. The neural link still hummed softly in Lena's mind, a quiet connection to Fenrir. She could feel his exhaustion, his satisfaction, his calm. The hunt was done, the enemy was gone. The door to the hold slid open. General Nora Hayes stepped inside, her face unreadable. She looked at the beasts, then at Lena. They did it. Lena nodded. They did. Hayes took a deep breath. The war's over. The Outsider Empire's crumbling without Diana. The Alliance worlds are already pushing them back. She crossed her arms, but that leaves us with a question. Lena looked up. What happens now? Hayes met her gaze. To them, she gestured to the beasts. Lena's chest tightened. She hadn't let herself think about what came after. The beasts weren't weapons to be stored away. They weren't soldiers to be discharged. They were alive. They were aware. Fenrir lifted his head, his glowing yellow eyes fixed on Hayes. He didn't growl, didn't snarl. He just watched, waiting. Hayes exhaled. Earth Command wants them contained, studied, maybe used again if needed. Lena's fingers curled into Fenrir's fur. No, Hayes raised an eyebrow. No, Lena stood, her legs shaky but her voice firm. They're not tools. They're not property. They fought for us. So they protected us. They deserve better than a cage. Hayes was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. What do you suggest? Lena turned to Fenrir. The dire wolf rose to his feet, his massive form towering over her. She reached up, resting her hand on his muzzle. The neurolink pulsed between them, warm and alive. Let them go home, Lena whispered. The Vanguard descended through Earth's atmosphere, its engines humming softly. Below, a vast wilderness stretched out, green forests, rolling hills, untouched by cities or war. A place where creatures like these had once roamed free, long before humans had built empires among the stars. The cargo bay doors opened. Sunlight streamed in, fresh air filling the hold. The beasts stirred, their heads lifting, their nostrils flaring as they caught the scent of earth and wind and wild things. Lena stood at the edge, her heart pounding. She turned to Fenrir. This is it. You're free. Fenrir looked at her. For a moment, the Neuralink flared bright, not with commands, not with battle plans, but with something deeper, something like gratitude, something like goodbye. Right. Then he turned and leaped from the ship, his powerful legs carrying him down to the grass below. Stormbreaker shrieked and followed, his wings spread wide. Shadowstalker vanished into the trees without a sound. Ursus lumbered out, sniffing the air before ambling toward the forest. Ghost was last, pausing just long enough to glance back at Lena before slipping into the undergrowth. Lena watched until the last of them disappeared into the wild. The neural link faded slowly, like a whisper on the wind. Hayes stepped up beside her. You sure about this? Lena smiled just a little. Yeah, I am. Somewhere in the wilderness, Fenrir stood atop a ridge, the wind ruffling his dark fur. Below him, the land stretched out, vast and untamed. He lifted his head and howled a sound that had not been heard on Earth for thousands of years. And the world, for the first time in a long time, felt whole again. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The forest was quiet except for the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. Fenrir stood at the edge of a clearing, his massive paws sinking into the soft earth. The air smelled of pine and damp soil, real, alive. Nothing like the sterile metal of the ship or the smoke of battle. Behind him, the other beasts moved through the trees. Stormbreaker perched on a high branch, his sharp eyes scanning the horizon. Shadowstalker flickered in and out of sight, his camouflage blending with the undergrowth. Ursus lumbered along, his nose twitching as he caught new scents. Ghost moved like a shadow, silent and unseen. This was their world now. But something was missing. Fenrir's ears twitched. His head turned toward the south where the trees thinned and the land opened into wide plains. The neural link was gone, but the memory of it lingered, a faint hum in the back of his mind, like an echo. Lena, he had fought beside her, hunted with her, trusted her, and she had set him free. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Not anger, not hunger. Something else. Something deeper. Stormbreaker shrieked from above, breaking the silence. His wings spread wide as he took flight, circling once before diving toward the plains. Fenrir watched, then followed. The others fell in behind him, moving as one. They had a new hunt now. Not for enemies, not for war. For a home. Lena Cruz sat on the steps of a small research outpost, her elbows resting on her knees. The Neuralink device lay in her hands, silent and dark. It had been 3 days since the beasts had been released. 3 days since she'd last felt Fenrir's presence in her mind. She told herself it was for the best. They belonged in the wild, not locked up as weapons. But the quiet in her head was strange, almost lonely. The door behind her opened. General Nora Hayes stepped out, holding 2 steaming cups. She handed one to Lena. You look like hell. Lena took the cup, the heat seeping into her fingers. Feel like it too. Hayes sat beside her, sipping her drink. Earth Command isn't happy. It wanted to study the beasts, learn how to make more. Lena's grip tightened on the cup. They're not machines. I know, Hayes sighed. But you get why they're nervous, right? Creatures like that loose on Earth? No control? Lena looked out at the trees. It won't hurt anyone who doesn't deserve it. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You sure about that? Before Lena could answer, a sound cut through the evening air, a howl. Deep, resonant, familiar, and rare. Lena stood so fast, she nearly spilled her drink. Her heart pounded. That wasn't far away. That was close. Hayes was on her feet too, her hand going to the sidearm at her hip. He said they'd stay in the deep wilderness. Lena shook her head, a slow smile spreading across her face. I said they were free. I didn't say they'd leave. Fenrir stood at the tree line, his glowing eyes fixed on Lena. The others waited behind him, watching. Lena took a step forward, then stopped. This wasn't the ship. This wasn't a mission. There were no commands to give, no enemies to fight. She held out her hand, palm up, empty. Fenrir's ears twitched, took a step forward, then another. And then he was there, close enough to touch. His breath was warm, his fur rough under her fingers. The connection wasn't the neural link, but it was something real. Hayes let out a slow breath. Well, I guess that answers that. Lena scratched behind Fenrir's ear, her voice soft. Yeah, it does. The beasts weren't weapons. They weren't soldiers. They were family. Earth was their home. The first snow of winter fell softly over the valley, covering the trees and grass in a thin blanket of white. Lena Cruz pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders as she walked along the forest path. Her boots crunched in the snow, the only sound in the quiet morning. She didn't need to call them. She never did. Fenrir emerged from the trees like a shadow, his dark fur dusted with snowflakes. His glowing yellow eyes locked onto her, warm and familiar. Stormbreaker perched on a nearby rock, his armored feathers fluffed against the cold. Shadowstalker flickered into view for just a moment before blending back into the winter landscape. Ursus lumbered up behind Lena, his hot breath puffing out in clouds. Coast appeared at her side without a sound, his sleek fur brushing against her leg. Lena smiled. Missed you too. She reached into her bag and pulled out thick cuts of material food, not the rations they'd had on the ship. Fenrir sniffed the air, his tail giving a single wag. Hayes had argued at first. You can't just feed them like stray dogs, she'd said. They're not pets. Lena had shrugged. They're not weapons either. They're family. And family took care of each other. Fenrir took the meat gently from her hand, his massive jaws careful around her fingers. Stormbreaker hopped down to claim his share, while Shadowstalker darted in to grab a piece before vanishing again. Ursus huffed impatiently until Lena tossed him his portion. Ghost waited until last, taking his food with quiet dignity. As they ate, Lena sat on a fallen log, watching them. They were different here, not the ruthless killers of the battlefield, but something softer. Fenrir nosed at a patch of snow like a pup. Stormbreaker preened his feathers, shaking off the cold. Even Shadowstalker, usually so tense, seemed at ease. This was how it was meant to be. The sound of an approaching vehicle made Lena turn. A military transport rolled to a stop at the edge of the clearing. General Nora Hayes stepped out, her boots sinking into the snow. The beasts went still. Fenrir's ears pricked forward. Stormbreaker's wings twitched. Hayes held up her hands. Easy, I come in peace. Lena stood, brushing snow off her pants. You're up early. Hayes nodded toward the beasts. I wanted to see them. See how they were doing? Lena glanced at Fenrir. The direwolf studied Hayes for a long moment, then gave a slow, deliberate blink. Acceptance. Hayes exhaled. Earth commands finally backed off. No more talk of capturing them. No more experiments. She shook her head. Turns out, no one wants to be the idiot who tries to lock up the creatures that won the war. Lena grinned. Smart of them. Hayes reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, the neural link. Thought you might want this. Officially decommissioned. No tracking, no monitoring, just the link, if you ever need it. Lena took it, turning it over in her hands. The metal was cool, familiar. She looked at Fenrir. He tilted his head, watching her. She slipped the device into her pocket, just in case. As Hayes left, the snow began to fall harder. Lena stayed where she was, letting the flakes settle in her hair. Fenrir moved to stand beside her, his warmth a comfort against the cold. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled, a real one, wild and free. Fenrir's ears twitched, his chest rumbled, but he didn't answer. He didn't need to. He was home. They all were, and as the snow kept falling, Lena knew one thing for certain. The world was safer with them in it. Spring came to the valley in a rush of green and gold. Flowers pushed through the thawing earth, and the trees shook off winter's grip with new leaves. Lena Cruz walked the familiar path to the clearing, a bag of meat slung over her shoulder. She didn't hurry. She knew they would be waiting. Fenrir lay in a patch of sunlight, his massive form stretched out like a contented cat. Stormbreaker perched above him on a sun-warmed rock, his feathers gleaming. Shadowstalker was nowhere to be seen but then. He never was until he wanted to be. Ursus snored loudly near the stream, his belly full from an early morning hunt. Ghost sat watchful at the edge of the trees, his golden eyes catching the light. Lena dropped the bag with a thud. Breakfast. Fenrir's ears twitched. He didn't move. Lena raised an eyebrow. Really? You're going to make me bring it to you now? A low rumble vibrated in Fenrir's chest. Not a growl. A laugh. Lena rolled her eyes and grabbed a piece of meat. You're spoiled, you know that? She tossed it toward him. Fenrir caught it midair with a snap of his jaws. Stormbreaker let out a demanding shriek. Shadowstalker materialized just long enough to steal a piece before vanishing again. Ursus woke with a grunt and ambled over. Ghost waited until the others had eaten before taking his share. This was their life now. Simple, quiet, good. The sound of an approaching engine broke the peace. Lena turned as a familiar military transport rolled to a stop. General Nora Hayes stepped out, but she wasn't alone. A young boy stood beside her, his eyes wide with awe as he stared at the beasts. Lena crossed her arms. You brought a kid? He shrugged. His name's Eli. His father served under me. He's heard stories. The boy couldn't have been more than 10. He clutched a book to his chest, a book with a familiar-looking direwolf sketched on the cover. Fenrir lifted his head, sniffing the air. The other beasts went still, watching. Eli took a shaky step forward. Are they? Are they real? Lena smiled. Yeah, they're real. Eli's breath caught as Fenrir stood, shaking out his fur. The direwolf was huge, his fangs still faintly glowing with dormant plasma. To his credit, the boy didn't run. He just whispered, wow. Fenrir tilted his head. Then, slowly, he lowered himself back down, his tail giving a single thump against the ground. An invitation. Eli looked at Lena, his eyes begging. Lena nodded. Go on, but be careful. Eli approached like he was walking on glass. When he was close enough, he reached out a trembling hand. Fenrir sniffed it, then nudged the boy's palm with his nose. Eli's face lit up like the sun. He's soft. Lena laughed. When he wants to be. Hayes watched as Eli moved among the beasts, his fear replaced by wonder. Stormbreaker allowed the boy to touch his feathers. Ursus huffed when Eli scratched behind his ears. Even Shadowstalker flickered into view just long enough to let the boy gasp at his camouflage. Hayes shook her head. You know, there are people who still don't believe they exist. Think the whole thing was a military cover-up. Lena shrugged. Let them think that. Safer for everyone. Hayes nodded toward Eli, who was now giggling as Ghost licked his fingers. What about him? Lena watched the boy, his joy bright and unguarded. We'll keep the secret. Kids understand things adults forget. Hayes was quiet for a moment. Then she said, they're legends now, you know, out there in the stars. The monsters Earth sent when the galaxy begged for saviors. Lena looked at Fenrir, at the pack that had become her family. They're not monsters. Fenrir's ears twitched. His glowing eyes met hers. And in that moment, Lena knew, no matter how many years passed, no matter how many stories were told, the truth would always be here. In this valley, in this peace. Not monsters, not weapons, just beasts. And they were home. As the sun set, painting the sky in fire, Eli climbed back into the transport, his face alight with joy. Hayes gave Lena a nod before following. The clearing fell quiet again. The beasts settled in for the night. Lena sat beside Fenrir, her fingers buried in his thick fur. Somewhere in the distance, a wolf howled. Fenrir lifted his head, and this time he answered,